In the quiet night, under the cold moonlight, you can clearly see the rusty mossy house and the ruined walls everywhere. At this moment, a staggering purple-black monster that was incomplete like a human came out from a corner. Crack-o-ho-ho! The beast-like roars from their mouths seemed to tear this fragmented world into pieces. Away from the corner of this abandoned road, there is a dilapidated hotel with a signboard that has fallen off. In a room of this hotel, there is a woman with a protruding belly wearing a black sportswear stained with blood. Her face was buried in the dim light, she couldn't see clearly, she seemed very frightened, her eyes were fixed on the slender woman leaning against the window and looking out, wearing a dirty black leather coat. She was wearing a ponytail, and there were blood clots from the zombies on her head from the fight today. She looked extremely dirty, and even her pretty face was also dirty at this time. A trace of disgust and disdain flashed in the woman's eyes. Weak but full of gratitude, he said, "Thank you for saving me, thank you for taking me to find my husband." He just walked towards her cautiously while talking, and the hand hidden under the clothes slowly twitched. "Come out, along the moon, you can clearly see a cold light." Those eyes were even more stern, completely inconsistent with her weak appearance at this time. Hearing the faint voice of thanks from behind, Bai Ling was expressionless. Why did she save her? Bai Ling's eyes looked a little empty, as if he had seen a scene from a long time ago. Once upon a time, her sister had such a big belly, and she videotaped with herself, talking about the child with a smile on her face. Her clear eyes flashed sadness and grief. It has been a year. As long as she closes her eyes, she can think of every scene of that day, with her hands clenched tightly, and a tear falls. She hated her own incompetence at the time. If not, how could she have watched them die tragically in front of her? Can't even contain their bones? Why did all the relatives who were good to me die, but she survived? Bai Ling always felt that God was unfair. What kind of good person would live a safe life? It's just nonsense. Taking a deep breath, he wanted to adjust his mood, because now was not the time to think about these things, but Bai Ling suddenly felt a pain in his heart when he heard a puff in his ear, and his clear eyes with tears in them stared wide open. Daji turned around slightly, and looked at the face of the only pregnant woman who seemed to have changed, very beautiful and seductive, glowing with flamboyance and complacency, and his eyes were fierce. Bai Ling lowered his head slowly, and a sword tip shone with cold light and blood appeared in his left chest cavity. This pain instantly spread throughout his body, and he clearly felt that the beating of his heart was being suppressed. He, she was too careless. Why? Bai Ling wanted to sneer at himself. As soon as the words fell, there was a puff, and she stabbed her in the abdomen again, and the blood spurted out like a water pump, spraying the pregnant woman in front of her with blood all over her face. Zombies are more than that. The pregnant woman walked up to the dying Bai Ling step by step, with a smile on her lips. "Why, of course it is for me and my child." Bai Ling was in pain. As a fire-type power user, she clearly felt that her body was starting to become cold, and her body couldn't hold it anymore. But this sentence made her feel ridiculous. She didn't even know her, and she never thought of hurting her and her child, otherwise why save her? In the last days, you really shouldn't trust anyone, especially a woman who survived for a year and can still conceive a child. No matter how weak her skills are, she has a vicious heart. Otherwise, how can she survive in this world where humanity is lost? Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Bai Ling was on the verge of falling. Looking at the shaky and dark ceiling, he felt that he saw the kind grandmother smiling at her, the younger sister holding the child waving at her, and the little uncle who seemed to be smiling and saying hello to her. What is she talking about? Powerless to return to heaven, Bai Ling's whole heart seemed to relax. She doesn't hate, really doesn't hate. Stretch out your hand, you can touch, grandma, sister, uncle. All right, I can finally reunite with you. The body finally slipped down weakly. The pregnant woman didn't expect that she would still be smiling when she died. Looking at that smile that closed her eyes but looked very pure and holy, there was a trace of anger in her heart. What was she happy about? The ferocious pregnant woman quickly walked over, and viciously pushed her out of the window, with a cold light in her eyes. Die, it's best not to leave anything behind. Not far away, the black and purple monster staggered and smelt the delicious meal. With a whistling sound, the speed was unexpectedly fast, and it ran directly towards the hotel like a cheetah looking for food. The pregnant woman standing upstairs had a victorious smile on her lips, watching the group of disgusting monsters carve up the woman, and bloody, but unfortunately she couldn't feel the pain anymore, squinting those beautiful eyes. Hey, it's really cheap for her up. At this time, I took out a photo from my arms. In the photo, there are two people smiling brightly and with some intimacy. Behind them is obviously a university, and the girl is not someone else but delicate, fair, and slightly immature. Bai Ling. The pregnant woman's hand lovingly touched the handsome, sunny, and tall man's face, with a happy and determined smile on his face. Baby, now your father won't be looking for his so-called lover everywhere, he will definitely marry me. Let go of your hand. The photo slowly fell with the woman's slender fingers, and finally melted into the pool of blood, but you can vaguely see the delicate and bright smile of the woman with the ponytail. On the street where people come and go, the setting sun casts a huge shadow through the high-rise buildings and falls on the busy road. At an intersection, it is the rush hour for get-off work. People are crowded, standing beside the sidewalk with red street lights waiting for the green light to come. Among them, standing at the front is a fair-skinned and delicate girl wearing a plaid jacket, cropped slacks, and straight hair loosely, holding a notebook with a dazed expression. Upon closer inspection, the girl is none other than the woman in the photo. Bai Ling was in a daze, and the blurry scene in front of him gradually became clear. Looking at the heavy traffic ahead, the red lights and neon signs, and the normal walking humans, his face was full of surprise, and his eyes widened. Those clear eyes are busy looking around. There are normal human faces, right? She really read it right. How could this be? Are those all dreams? The scenes in my mind kept flashing, so real? Those human-eating zombies, mutated animals, and bugs, ruined and terrifying, the most populous big city. In the end, Bai Ling's memory was frozen in the scene before his death, the distorted face covered in her blood. Bai Ling touched his chest and abdomen reflexively, and there was still a dull pain on it. All these experiences seemed to happen in the last second. If it was a dream, this dream was too real and unbelievable. How could she have such a dream? That. If it is a dream, grandma, uncle, sister. Are they still there? Busily searching his pockets, about to take out his mobile phone, suddenly his whole body froze. The time is clearly displayed on the phone, May 3, 2018. Bai Ling seemed to have thought of something, and reflexively turned his head to look at the big square not far from the intersection, staring at the live TV broadcast on it, May 3, 2018 at 17:35. May 3, 2018, as long as the living human beings will never forget this day, the beginning of this worldwide disaster is also the beginning of the nightmare of people all over the world. Bai Ling's pupils dilated instantly, and the pupils seemed to be printed on the screen. If the images in her mind were real, then the next thing to do is to report to GD zombie virus. Pray in my heart, don't be true. Unfortunately, history is history after all. If you do it again, it is still just a repeat. As soon as Bai Ling's thoughts fell, he saw a host with short hair appearing on the big screen. The following news will be broadcast. It has been 3 months since the discovery of the GD virus. Although the source of the GD virus has not yet been found, I don't know exactly how the virus spreads, but the general public don't need to panic. Just got the latest news. The mayor of this city, City S, called and said that the infected people have been controlled to a certain extent. Next it is to describe the symptoms of GD virus infection. Once you find that you have a sudden fever around you, and the high fever persists, the pupils are dilated, and the body is stiff, please send it to the hospital immediately so that the medical staff can treat it in time. Lie. There is no antidote for the GD virus at all, let alone control. It was a zombie virus, it was spread by biting and cannibal zombies, and it was spread by the blood of zombies. Bai Ling hurriedly looked sideways at the hip-hop boy beside him who was wearing earphones, stepped on the drawing board, and was wearing a small scarf. As expected, he was spitting out bubbles. Spit it out, looking like a ruffian. Why are you so uncivilized, spitting out things casually? Bai Ling said softly, but said the same thing as a migrant girl with a small backpack behind the boy. Who are you to control me? The police don't care about me, why do you control me? This sentence Bai Ling said softly again, but this time it was exactly the same as that said by the boy who looked rebellious. The exact same scene happened. Bai Ling remembered this incident very clearly, but felt that his whole heart kept sinking. All the things that happened before, let's do it again, that is to say, because of the GD virus, most people turned into zombies, those mutated animals, plants, and bugs are all real, all of this is real. Grandma, sister, little nephew, uncle. Every time a relative's name was mentioned, the tears in Bai Ling's eyes increased. Bai Ling's parents divorced when she was very young, and her mother was forced to death by her climbing father. She and her younger sister were raised by their grandmother since childhood. At that time they were really poor. My uncle was the old man of the deceased grandfather. When they passed, the youngest uncle was only 13 years old. In order to support them, he obviously had good grades, but he dropped out of school in junior high school to help his grandmother go out and earn money to subsidize the family. And her younger sister is also a student with good moral character, but the annual income of such a family is only 3,000 yuan. It's okay, but high school, it will be a lot of money, how can they afford it? After finishing junior high school, she planned to go out to work, to earn money with her grandmother and uncle, and to go to school with her younger sister, but she didn't want to be found out by Bai Shan before she left the village with her parcel on her back. She doesn't read anymore. Bai Ling's grandmother and uncle never thought about letting the two children who can study and have a bright future drop out of school. Besides, why did Bai Ling's uncle drop out of school in the first place? It was for the sake of these two sisters, he regretted it and did not want these two sisters to understand it, and he would inevitably give Bai Ling a hard lesson for this matter. They are not so poor yet, if they take 10,000 steps back, they will pay for everything in the future. The two sisters go to school. But Bai Ling knew the situation of this family in his heart. How could Bai Shan, who was sensible and sensitive since she was a child, not know? From then on, Bai Shan stopped studying hard. Although she was taught by her uncle and grandmother, and even Bai Ling preached, she still did not change her original intention. She just smiled and said, "Sister, I don't like reading. When I read those words, my head hurts." Later, Bai Ling found out that she really wanted to study, but she just gave it up to her. It was also for her that she went out to work to earn money. As an elder sister, she heard her sister say the most, "Sister, don't worry about money, I may earn it now." This is what her younger sister, who is 3 years younger than her, said to her elder sister, and as an older sister, she actually wants her to share the burden for her. But she has scholarships, grants, and even work-study programs and part-time jobs during winter and summer vacations, which is enough for her to complete 1 or 2 semesters like ordinary students. Even so, as usual, I would receive money from 3 different people every month, although it was not much, not even as much as the summer job she was looking for in a big city, but Bai Ling's heart was warm, yes happy, but also guilty. If her sister hadn't gotten her wish last year and married someone she liked, and happily gave birth to a son, she would never forgive herself. Only my uncle was implicated by the 2 sisters. Now he is 32 years old. He is obviously tall and mighty, with thick eyebrows and big eyes, but he has not found a wife. Fortunately, their lives have been greatly improved compared to before. Good policies for the countryside have made their families richer, but how long is the good life? The end of the world is coming. Zombies, mutated animals and plants, and the harsh environment make it difficult for human beings to survive, and they died not long after the end of the world. No matter why she returned to the present more than a year after the end of the world, when the disaster just happened, maybe it was the rebirth that I told others, but they are still alive now. Bai Ling clasped her hands tightly, raised her head, her eyes were frighteningly bright. She is not afraid of the end of the world, because even in hell, she is not afraid, she is afraid of losing them, her dearest relatives. Bai Ling couldn't help laughing, and laughed so loudly that the computer in her arms fell down, and with a slamming sound, she was run over by the car and shattered into pieces, but she was still laughing, as if possessed by a demon. Just like that, he kept muttering, "That's great, that's great." The two people who were about to quarrel at the side saw this scene, looked at each other, and said in unison, "Is this woman crazy?" Other passers-by also turned their attention to Bai Ling, a good little girl, suddenly going crazy? Are you infected with the GD virus? Seeing the people around him looking at him strangely, Bai Ling wiped his tears, but still couldn't hide the joy on his face. His eyes became extremely firm, his hands were clenched, and the time he stared at the screen on the square again, his voice was definitely not low, even trembling slightly. "There are still 3 hours, and the end of the world is coming. It's crazy." The others shook their heads. "This little girl looks pretty good, what a pity." Although the environment is seriously polluted, the smog is expanding, and superbugs are also appearing frequently, you can see that the world is bright and full of traffic. Is it an earthquake or a tsunami? Also the end of the world? Why don't you say the earth exploded? Bai Ling didn't care how these people looked at her like an idiot, and gritted his teeth. This time, he must protect their health, even if she died. Time is running out. This is City S, and her hometown is in a small village in Fengcheng, City H. 2 provinces need to be destroyed. The provinces of Huaxia Kingdom are naturally very large, and it takes 5 or 6 hours even by plane. In the previous life, because of the long distance and the lack of experience in dealing with zombies, it would have been impossible to rely on others to get there without the support of willpower. It took more than a month to return to my hometown, but unexpectedly, when she arrived, she happened to see her family's village being overrun by zombies, and her grandmother was pushed into the pile of zombies by someone she knew to buy time to save her life. No matter how heart-piercingly she rushed over, all she got was her grandmother's blood. If it wasn't for her uncle, she would almost have been bitten to death by zombies because of this impulsiveness. Turned around and headed towards another intersection, which happened to be a red light, but now Bai Ling didn't want to waste a second, so he rushed over without saying anything. "I'm going, she's looking for death." No one thought that Bai Ling ran past without any pause at all, and those people standing at the intersection waiting for the red light all stared wide-eyed. On a street with a lot of traffic, Bai Ling passed through the endless traffic of cars with great agility. At this moment, the same car rushed over, even wanting to brake suddenly, but it was too late. All the people could not help but stare wide-eyed, waiting for the car accident to happen. But they didn't know that the beautiful and thin figure jumped up, took advantage of the front of the car with one hand, jumped over, jumped 4 or 5 meters, and reached the opposite side directly. This shocking scene obviously shocked the group of people. Even the person who braked forgot to teach this person who did not abide by the rules and regulations. "I'm going, what did I just see? Not a gymnast. It seems that I don't have hallucinations, which is incredible. Great man. It is a miracle that you can still perform such difficult movements on this kind of endless road." If you look carefully, you can see that the car that Bai Ling just passed is expensive, and it is a limited edition worldwide. The driver obviously hadn't realized it until now, because just as he braked, the small shadow flew over his car as if flying. A pair of very gentle and jade-like eyes followed the figure at the back of the car, and even forgot to read the information in her hand. The delicate girl of 24 or 5 years old didn't seem to expect that she would be like this, and she was dumbfounded. The pink lips of the owner of the eyes were slightly raised, and a soft voice came out of his mouth, which shocked people, but felt very comfortable. Even those eyes as gentle as the stars are revealing little smiles. The uncle driver seemed a little nervous, and hurriedly followed the rear-view mirror to look back. What he saw was a handsome face with sharp corners and angles, but soft and handsome like an angel, and those deep but soft eyes like the universe. I don't know why she smiled lightly, showing her white teeth. She looks personable, full of luxury, and gentle like the warm sun, giving people a feeling of spring breeze. She looks only 27 or 28 years old. Sir, are you all right? It's okay, let's go, we must leave here before dark. The voice was full of magnetism but still soft, with a hint of inexplicable sadness in his tone. What should come is still coming, I can't control its spread. This seems to be just an unrelated episode. Bai Ling, who was standing on the opposite side of the road, seemed to be reacting at this time, looking at her hands and feet, although she usually maintains the habit of exercising, but this kind of quick reaction ability should not be available to her now. Try quickly after a while, there is no ability. Bai Ling showed a smile at the corner of his mouth. No matter what, this is another way to save his life, isn't it? Running directly towards his first destination, the speed was unexpectedly fast. On this crowded street, many people noticed him. But Bai Ling, who was eager to go home, didn't see that at the previous intersection, the hip-hop boy chewing bubble gum, stepping on a skateboard, and wearing a scarf was stunned. I'll go, I can't see, she is so neat skills. Could it be that you are also a parkour enthusiast? A gleam of admiration flashed in his eyes, and he followed with a skateboard. Bai Ling knew what he was going to do, so he immediately called his grandmother, uncle, and sister. In the end, it didn't work out. Wiping the sweat off his face, looking up at the surroundings, the phone is still dialing, and he understands that the speed of walking like this is obviously too slow, and it is the rush hour for getting off work. No matter where it is, there are huge crowds of people, and the car is even more blocked. Long queue. Even at night, in the weather that has started to heat up in May, there will only be more people. At that time, the whole road will be blocked, and the number of zombies will increase exponentially. Time is limited, no matter what, we must take advantage of the outbreak of the virus and get out of this city. Bai Ling clenched his hands and tried his best. After running for an unknown amount of time, Bai Ling happened to see a place to buy bicycles. His eyes flickered slightly, and finally a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He ran over and went straight in. 5 minutes later, Bai Ling rode through the traffic jams. Bai Ling's speed was still not slow, but Bai Ling frowned. Why did the 17 or 18-year-old boy in rivet clothes behind her follow her? But now Bai Ling didn't have time to care about him, so he looked down at the phone, anxious, and it ran out of battery at this time? Hey, isn't it? The boy didn't know how long he had been with her, and he even passed through various gaps between high-rise buildings. Looking at the high-rise buildings that were getting farther and farther away, the sky was completely dark, and he felt a little chilly. The point is, how could she know such a shortcut? How did he know that Bai Ling wanted to escape the city from the pile of zombies in his previous life, and had planned several routes? How could he not know where the shortcut is? Leaving a densely populated place does not mean that the surrounding area of this big city is a desolate place. On the contrary, there are many stores nearby, especially various force stores, and even car rental shops, supermarkets, and places where residents live. Bai Ling looked at the time, 1950. I really wanted to swear, but I didn't expect that even if the city didn't encounter any obstacles, it still took her so much time to take a shortcut, and there were 40 minutes left. The incident of biting and cannibalism occurred around 8:30 in the previous life. She is outside now and doesn't know if it will be ahead of time. Fortunately, Shunfeng car rental is not far away. The reason why she knows this car dealership is because she has helped with the advertising planning here, and the cars here can be said to be everything. The boss was a middle-aged man in his 40s. When Bai Ling arrived, he left his bicycle on the ground and ran in quickly. The owner of the car dealership happened to be handing over the car. Seeing that there were customers arriving at the door so late, he wanted to greet the customer earlier, but he didn't expect her to run towards him. He quickly saw who she was. "Ah, no Miss Bai? How come I can rent a car today?" Then he laughed again. "Hey, the advertising plan your company designed for us is really good, and the revenue has been increasing recently." Bai Ling just nodded slightly in return. Maybe after living in the end of the world for a long time, she is not used to facing such enthusiastic and harmless people. Although he knew that time was running out, he didn't rush. "Boss Xiao, I came to you today to rent a car." Bai Ling said and took out the card, which was the 3 years she had worked for. All the savings were originally intended to be given to grandma, uncle and younger sister, but after the end of the world, is money useful? Food is the most precious thing. For a piece of bread, you can grab your head and blood. Thinking of this, Bai Ling's eyes darkened, and he thought of his sister. Oh! The 40-year-old boss thought he heard it wrong, but seeing her firm eyes, he nodded and smiled. "Okay, since it's Miss Bai who wants to rent a car, I'll give it a cheaper price." "What kind of car does the lady want to rent?" Bai Ling pointed to the latest black Land Rover on the billboard of the car rental company without saying a word. "This kind of car has a high chassis and other features are very good." If possible, Bai Ling would like to rent a Land Rover military car, but that kind of car usually doesn't appear in these places. The 40-year-old boss looked up and smiled. The cost of renting this car is naturally high, and he can earn a lot of money. "Okay. How many days?" "1 day. Bai Ling will be able to drive after college, because her uncle is in the car repair industry now, and there is a second-hand car rebuilt from a scrap car, and she often helps run errands and deliver things. In the end of the world, Bai Ling's driving skills are even more proficient in escaping from the pursuit of various zombies and mutant beasts. 1 day. Is it urgent? Okay, come with me." Without delaying her, she hurriedly waved to the staff at the side and ordered a few words. Bai Ling followed him through the formalities as quickly as possible, turned around with the key, and followed the staff member to pick up the car. But she didn't expect that the hip-hop boy in big sunglasses who was smiling at her and hurriedly greeted her was walking in front of her. Seeing Bai Ling looking at him, the boy hurriedly took off the big glasses, revealing a small, round face with the same big and round eyes, and a big smile. Bai Ling looked at the boy indifferently, frowned slightly, and just about to speak, the next second her pupil shrank, and her heart beat violently, as if she had really verified that all her previous experiences were true. My whole heart didn't know whether it was joy or sadness, but I walked forward quickly and kicked across. Feeling the tremendous pressure, the corners of Bai Ling's mouth turned up slightly. It is true, everything is true, but what happened in the last life, she will definitely not let it happen again in this life. No one can stop it, even if it is God. If this is fate, then she will change it. The 13-year-old hip-hop boy was shocked. It all happened so suddenly that he didn't have time to react. He was stunned on the spot. The key question was, why did she beat him? Especially those eyes, which were full of hostility at this time, even carrying a strong killing intent. The brown pupils made him see a black aura. The boy felt like his whole heart stopped beating because of her pupils. Roar! But at the same time, a beast-like roar came from the hip-hop boy's ears, even with a hint of fishy smell. Bai Ling's foot just kicked the man's side face. With the sound of a touch, the man in the uniform of a staff member, his eyes turned white, and his face began to turn purple, fell to the ground. The hip-hop boy was still stunned, but took a step back in fright. The voice just now didn't sound like a human being at all. Why are you beating someone? The staff accompanying Bai Ling was taken aback when they saw this scene. How could she beat his colleague for no reason? He hurried over to help the person who was still wriggling on the ground up. Don't go! Bai Ling yelled, but it was too late. Zombies don't feel pain or emotion, and only have the desire for human flesh. There was a poof. The zombie who fell on the ground was full of energy in an instant, and he didn't need to wait for his colleagues to help him. He had already opened his mouth to the maximum limit, and bit the man's neck with one bite, blood flowing. Ah! Followed by a scream. The hip-hop boy really likes to be stimulated. This ignorant look, he may have beaten someone before, but he has never seen someone who bites like this, and this bite took off a large piece of meat from that person's neck. Actually swallowed it. It seems to have eaten delicious food in the world, and it also makes a gurgling sound. Watching this scene, fear flashed in his eyes, and he felt a chill on his neck. Of course it wasn't just his screams, the surroundings fluctuated with each other as if they had accepted the signal of the screams. It was like a tragic symphony, which opened the curtain of on earth. Boss, what are you doing? Don't, ah! The voice in this store is even clearer. Bai Ling raised his head. The boss, who was talking and laughing before, was currently holding a person tightly, biting and swallowing. His eyes had already turned white, and his face was also black and purple. Outside the door, there were also people staggering in twos and threes, with blood on their faces and bodies, and even a zombie with a broken arm came in. Whether it was inside or outside the store, the living people didn't know it and rushed forward to persuade them, but it turned out to be food in their mouths. And the food that they dropped and bitten fell to the ground screaming. Some of them were completely bitten off their necks and died. Bai Ling's eyes darkened a little, and his expression became deeper and deeper. Damn it, this is too crazy, what's going on? The hip-hop boy stared blankly at the scene in front of him, and reflexively took out his phone to call the police, but the next moment, his phone fell on the ground with a thud on the ground. Because of that, the person whose neck was about to be broken stood up, pointing with one hand at the head shaking unnaturally as it walked. It! Roar with a loud roar, he actually rushed towards him directly. The boy was so frightened that his legs went limp, and he fell to the ground in an instant. Seeing that the thing was about to touch him, the boy didn't know the courage that came from him, so his heart swayed. He grabbed the skateboard in his hand and slapped it on it. The head that was about to break fell off in an instant. Rolled onto his body with a grunt, the ferocious face that was so close at hand was still a real human head, talking to him alive just now. Ah! The hip-hop boy screamed, threw the other end over, turned around and saw another monster coming. That monster had a big in its abdomen, bloody, and even the red intestines inside could be seen, but it didn't seem to feel pain, and was even very excited. It's over, is this the rhythm of death? The hip-hop boy was terrified to the core, as if he had thought of something. He looked at the woman reflexively, and saw her face was cold, her eyes didn't show the slightest fear, she was very calm, and she dodged the mutated boss's attack in a flash. Attack, followed by kicking away the mutated employee with a piece of meat in his mouth blocking the way, and headed towards the inside of the garage. It's completely different from this screaming, panic, fear, and depressive atmosphere. It's so cozy, isn't it? Where is this sacred? In this manating monster, it's like a duck to water. Hey, big sister, aunt, don't leave me behind. Subconsciously, the boy regarded her as a lifesaver, and followed her immediately. As he pounced, perhaps it was his survival instinct that made him dodge. Bai Ling doesn't have the slightest mood to care about these things now, because even if she does, who will believe her? And who would be grateful to her? You will think she is crazy. When he got into the car and was about to start the car, Bai Ling saw the rear door was opened, and the hip-hop boy jumped on it quickly, panting heavily, obviously still undecided, his hand on the chair still some trembling. This look is many times better than the first time she saw the hideous monster eating people. Even so, there is no room for him in this car, Bai Ling said coldly, get down. The hip-hop boy thought he had tinnitus and had an illusion. I don't like to say it a second time. Looking through the rear-view mirror, Bai Ling's eyes gleamed coldly. After experiencing the apocalypse for more than a year, and being reborn after death, Bai Ling no longer needs the mercy and kindness of humanity, let alone trust anyone. What's more, there are so many cars here, you can drive anyone, why do you have to get in her car? The hip-hop boy had never seen such eyes as cold as a of death, as if they were full of darkness, but seeing the monsters walking towards them outside, the hip-hop boy didn't want to get out of the car even if he died, and hugged him tightly. The seat of the car fully displays the personality of the bear child, I don't. Bai Ling narrowed his eyes, and felt a little cold in his heart. She doesn't have an air conditioner to teach a child who has nothing to do with her. The hip-hop boy's heart trembled, and he quickly shifted the conversation and pointed to the front, that thing is coming. Bai Ling slammed on the brakes, and with a bang, blood flowed, knocking the zombie who was not afraid of death blocking the road far away, with a hint of evil in his eyes, but he looked at the boy through the rear-view mirror. The hip-hop boy slammed into the roof of the car behind him because of the sudden acceleration, inertia, and impact, screaming in pain. Don't make noise. Hearing the tone of the order, the hip-hop boy had tears in his eyes, but he didn't dare to make a sound. Should he thank that thing for coming out suddenly and keeping his seat in this car? And why is this woman so cold-blooded? We are all Chinese compatriots, is she willing to drive him away at this time? Seeing this child's expression, Bai Ling frowned, knowing his thoughts clearly in his heart, and finally put his eyes on the road ahead. Bai Ling was not so kind to those human beings who had just mutated in the road, and couldn't avoid it. Kai directly bumped into it. After going out, you can also see a lot of cars staying on the road, some even hit the surrounding pillars, some crashed into the surrounding storefronts, the monsters outside actually climbed into the window, and there were screams from the car. Of course, many surrounding people came down from the residential area, maybe to watch the fun, or maybe to dissuade them with good intentions, but they were all implicated, just like the people in the car dealership. They were directly bitten by people who turned into monsters, bite to death, but what you can see, no matter what, as long as people who have been bitten by monsters seem to be infected, they have also become monsters that bite and eat people. Looking at the monsters crawling on top of a dead body in twos and threes enjoying a big meal, the hip-hop boy felt like he was going to spit out his overnight meal. But that woman was able to remain expressionless while watching this scene? Seems to be very used to it. Is this still a normal human being? Do not be too. Let's go to the police station. Although I don't know what happened, but it is too scary to call the police for such a thing. What happened tonight? A terrorist exercise? Why can dead people turn into human-eating monsters? It's been half an hour since just now. Did you hear the sound of an ambulance coming? Did you hear the sound of the police car horn? Bai Ling didn't look at the rear-view mirror, his voice was cold. Watching the screaming, the passers-by who were calling for help saw the new zombies who joined the zombie team and rushed to other humans after being bitten to death, and saw the people who were crying and dragging their relatives to escape here. This kind of world is the one she is familiar with. She smiled like Ashura, welcome to the end of the world. This time, the hip-hop boy heard this sentence very clearly, as if he was struck by lightning. The end of the world? What is the end of the world? Could it be? Isn't it the only place where such things happen? Bai Ling is not talking anymore. How many people have been observing this truth for a few days before slowly realizing it? I didn't expect this teenager to accept this fact so quickly, looking at his mobile phone with deep eyes. There is a charging socket in this car, but there is no charger for her mobile phone. She now has to get in touch with her family. Hey, sister, stop now. The hip-hop boy didn't think how long they had been gone. On this street, she stopped the car. Didn't she see that because of her actions, many monsters have noticed this place? Let's go quickly, get out of here first. Even if you don't go to the police station, you should find a safe place to take refuge. And such a big thing happened, the national leader. Thinking of this, the hip-hop boy is completely stiff. Couldn't the country's leaders turn into monsters first? Just now, someone turned into a monster without being bitten. There are old people, children, middle-aged, young adults, men and women, all ages, and it has nothing to do with whether the body is strong or personal identity. If so, isn't that whole world caught up in cannibal chaos? This is the end of the world? How could this woman know? And she seemed to have said on the road before that the end of the world was coming. At that time, everyone thought she was joking. But now the facts tell him that this is true, the end of the world has come. As soon as Bai Ling opened the car door, a monster staggered towards him, baring its teeth and claws. Bai Ling focused his eyes, stepped on his body, and rushed into the mobile phone shop next to him very quickly. Because it was not too late, it was still open, and something happened outside, so the boss here I went out with the staff to persuade the fight, of course I can't go back. Bai Ling has seen countless zombies in her previous life. If she is still afraid now, then her previous life was completely useless. Wait for me. The hip-hop boy sitting in the car finally realized something was wrong. These monsters seemed to be able to smell human beings. When the car stopped, several of them came towards him, fearful, so that he didn't dare to get out of the car, and saw Bai Ling intending to close the door of the store at a glance, so it's okay. Wouldn't he be left alone on this street full of monsters? Sure enough, there is no sympathy at all. Jumped down without further ado, but was unfortunately caught by a monster. The hip-hop boy exploded with great agility, took off the leather jacket with a flick of his hands, and rolled in just as Bai Ling closed the door completely. Even if he stayed in this mobile phone store, the hip-hop boy still kneeled on the ground with weak legs, trembling all over. This is a normal reaction. Bai Ling has no disdain for the boy's appearance at this time. Glancing at him, he quickly picked up 5 or 6 mobile phones with fast charging speed and long standby time on the counter. Thanks to her working as a salesperson in a mobile phone store when she was working in summer vacation, she looked at the 6-inch mobile phone in her hand. Quickly took out the card in his several hundred yuan mobile phone, installed it, and took out other cards at the counter while waiting for the boot, pulled out 8 cards, and quickly activated them. Because the end of the world has just begun, the electricity is naturally still there, so there is a computer, and the 8 cards, including her own Bai Ling, are set to unlimited use. Bai Ling thought of his previous life. The end of the world is coming, but the satellite can still be used normally, so the phone can naturally be used. This kind of long-distance contact thing, many people used to think about it when they were running for their lives. Later, some organizations paid high prices for people to collect these things.